You're going to start something absolutely amazing in 2024. I know, by the way, Happy New Year. It's day 2 of 2024, and I'm going to talk about starting something that you want to start. Wait a sec. Starting something online. Now, if you want to start make holes in the backyard, have at it. It's not really where I'm going with this, but I want to give you 5 steps today for a startup guide for 2024. And I want to do that right here, right at the first of the year to give you a great start. Now, this is something that you can't just start and go through the 5 steps in a month and be on your way. That would be amazing. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. But yeah, this is a whole year thing. And by the way, if you don't know exactly who I am, I'm Bill McConnell, founder of the Conquer Yourself Project. I help people get out of their own way and start things absolutely amazing. And I'm talking about starting something amazing online this year. AI is a big deal. We're not going to get into that yet because this is pretty much 10,000, 30,000 foot view. These are 5 steps, 5 things that we're going to be looking at. 5 things that if you do them, and you have to do them in order, by the way, if you do them, by the end of the year, you will have started something absolutely amazing. So this is the 2024 Startup Guide, 5-step startup. This is how you're going to start up a new YouTube channel or a TikTok channel or a Facebook group or maybe even a website where you're building something yourself from scratch. This is a startup, and it is a 10,000 foot view, 30,000 foot view. It's a really high view. We're not getting down into the nitty gritty, what's at the side of the road type of thing. We're getting into the high level of startup. So let's just get at it. The first is this. And by the way, the first one is the hardest. The first one is the hardest. And the second one is the second hardest. And the third one is the third hardest. And once you get past those first 3, the fourth gets a little easier, and the fifth almost happens automatically. But it's going to take you a while to get to the fifth one. The hardest one here is focus. And focus is talking about getting a niche. A niche, a niche, a niche. I hear one guy that I'm following calls it a niche, and I hear another guy that I'm following calls it a niche. It doesn't really matter, but let's just talk about your niche. Now, if you're my mother, if my mother was starting something up in 2024, she passed away many years ago, but ever since I've known my mother, which is all of my life when you think about it, she could knit. That would be her niche. But knitting isn't just, that's a really high level niche. And you got to dial it down. You got to get it down a little further and down a little further and down a little further. You have to do something like that. Let's talk about knitting. If knitting is my mother's niche, knitting everything is not a great idea. Hey, I'm going to go on and today I'm going to teach about knitting blankets. And tomorrow I'm going to teach you about knitting covers for your car. She didn't knit those, but you get the idea. So knitting everything is not a good idea. You niche down or you niche down, and then you talk about knitting clothing. Well, what kind of clothing? Underwear? A little awkward. You're not going to be doing that, but you're talking about niching down, and if it's knitting clothes from the waist up. Now we're getting into something a little better. Knitting clothes from the waist up that isn't a sweater. Wait a sec. Knitting sweaters is kind of the mainstay. Well, you may not want to start there. My mom might not want to start there. She might want to start knitting clothes from the waist up just to keep your head warm. Knitting hats. That would be that. What about knitting hats for preteen girls? Knitting hats for preteen girls with pom-poms on them. Now that's a niche. Knitting right there. And once she nails that and gets some people watching her doing knitting hats with pom-poms on them, that'd be kind of cool. It really would be. But once she starts there, that would be a starting point. She can go and we'll get into how to expand, but let's just start with that. Let's take another example. Models. Not those kind of models. Model vehicles. Well, let's be even more specific. Model planes. Let's be even more specific. Model planes from World War II. What about model planes from World War II that actually glide and fly? Or model planes from World War II that are radio controlled. Now there's a niche. Once you find your focus, and for some people that don't have a hobby that they want to focus on, finding your niche is kind of hard. It really is. But once you find your niche and really dial it down, you basically have to ask yourself a couple of questions. Who do you want to attract? And what do you love to do? Ask those 2 questions, put them together, find your focus for what you're going to want to start up. The first thing you have to do in a startup of something like this online is find your niche. What are you going to talk about? What are you going to do? What are you going to show? How are you going to help? That's the first one. Second one is this, a foundation. Once you have your focus, work on your foundation. A foundation is, well, you're building a house and you're not going to use 5 different kinds of bricks or 5 different types of whatever to build a foundation. You're going to choose one type of brick and one type of foundation that you're going to use and that you're going to make. So your foundation is, what are you going to do specifically, and what are you not going to do specifically? What are you going to do? What are you not going to do? Start by doing this. Make a list of 10 things, okay, about your niche that you want to teach about it, and it's already the thing that you've already dialed down to. And when you start, because we're talking about starting something brand new, when you start, focus on just those 10 little things. Let's say it's knitting hats for preteen girls with pom-poms. You might want to pick 10 different styles or 10 different colors or 10 different patterns. But you're going to stick with it. You're going to stick with a foundation. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to build on. It's the thing you're going to build on. Got it? That's the second thing. Focus is the first thing. Foundation is the second thing. Third thing is a framework. So what's a framework? Well, the framework is what people are going to see. The foundation is what you built. It's below ground. It's going to hold the framework. But what is the framework? The framework is what other people are going to see. And so, okay, I'm going to do this 2 times a week. Okay, are you going to do this 2 times a week on your front porch and hope people show up and watch you? You could do that. In the wintertime, it might be a little chilly. But hey, if you're knitting hats, you might be able to sell a few at the end of the day. It's a thought. So we're thinking about, are you going to do Instagram Reels? Are you going to do YouTube Shorts? Are you going to do TikToks? Are you going to start a Facebook group? What's it going to be? How are you going to get it out there? Is it going to be on your own website where people have to come and find you? What's it going to be? What's your framework? And then how many times a week are you going to do this? How many times a week are you going to jump on and work your plan, show your focus, build your foundation? This is the framework. The framework is your medium. How are you going to do this? Where are you going to do it where people can watch? That's the framework. The next thing is flow. This sounds good. Now, I want you to think of your kitchen sink. On our kitchen sink, we have the thing where you can pull and it can move all around, and it's got a button on it where it gives you 2 things. The first one is flow, and it's just one straight stream of water. And the fourth thing here in the startup guide is, once you get your focus and your framework and your focus and your foundation and your framework, got to do this in order. Then there's flow, and that's consistency. I'm going to be doing this every day, every week, 4 times a week, and you're creating flow within your focus. You're still inside your focus. Some people say, I want to teach about mindset, but I want to start with knitting hats. So I'm going to knit a hat and talk about mindset, and knit a hat and talk. And you're kind of all over the place, because then you want to talk about, hey, guess what happened to me last week? Oh, you should see this cat video. I thought I'd share it with you because it really made me feel good. That's not flow, okay? That's a broken pipe somewhere. So flow is your consistency, and you're doing this one thing, and you're gaining a following, and people are starting to watch, and you answer every comment, and you create based on the comments. You're saying, hey, it'd really be cool if you did this, it'd really be cool if you did that. And then you start to build up what other people are telling you, how they like you and why they like you, and you're creating flow. And flow has to do with consistency and showing up and being there and just continuing and continuing. Think about the sink. You've got that one little stream coming down. That's all you want. It's very concentrated. It's just that one little stream. The fifth thing is this, fountain. Now, if you take that kitchen sink idea and you've got the flow, and I push the button on that changes it from flow to basically a spray, well, I'm going to call that a fountain because it starts with F and all the other ones start with F. So fountain. And that's expanding on your niche. That's expanding on it. Now, instead of having just one little thing, then you can flow on a whole bunch of different things. I've seen several examples of people online, specifically on YouTube, interestingly enough, where they started with one thing, and 4 years later, they were talking about everything, and people were still watching, and people were still growing, and people were still loving what they do because they had to focus. They started with a foundation, they built on their framework, and they really worked their flow and their consistency in the one thing so that when they had a following, people would say, I trust this person, I know this person. And then when they started to expand, yeah, you get the idea. Now, here's the best example that I can think of, and it's on YouTube. And it's got a name that doesn't really, if you hear the name, you don't have a clue what it is. So here's the name. Okay, and you can look it up on YouTube. Honestly, I could care less about their focus, but I love watching them, and I never miss an episode when they put it out. I haven't missed an episode in a couple of years, but I could care less about their focus. I'm not going to jump in and do their focus. You'll understand in a minute. The name of their YouTube channel is called 3D Bot Maker. What does that have to do with anything? 3D Bot Maker. Is it a what? See what I mean? It's hard to even consider what it might be unless you know what they do. It has something to do with this, and I just happen to have a couple of these. I actually have a whole case of them. Yeah, look at that. 3D Bot Maker has to do with not just Hot Wheels, but little model cars that go down a track. Now, this is an original. I've got originals. All of my originals that I have in the case over here, no, I'm not going to show them because that's going down a rabbit hole. But all of these originals are from the 1960s. These things are older than the guys I'm talking about. 3D Bot Makers was either one guy or two guys that said, hey, let's take our Hot Wheels and send them down a track and make a video of it and put it up on YouTube. Really? People are going to watch that? Oh, yeah. They have over 820,000 subscribers to their channel. That's a lot of subscribers. I could care less about it, but I watch it. I watch it and I watch it every week because it's so entertaining. It is 6 minutes of entertainment for me. Absolutely love it. But they didn't start out doing all of what they do. They started out saying, hey, let's take a couple of cars and send them down a track and let people watch them. But here's how they took their focus, built a foundation, created a framework, got into a flow, and now it's an absolute bloody fountain. Absolutely crazy. They started with model cars, model racing cars that are 64 scale, a 1/64 scale. So model racing cars, 1/64 scale, and they started showing races with two cars. This is how they've been able to expand. They have a membership where somebody pays them monthly to watch special stuff on their YouTube channel. Yeah. Now, I don't know what it is, whether it's $10 or $5, doesn't matter. They have over 820,000 subscribers. Now, not all of them are paid. You know, a lot of them are like me. I'm not going to pay. It's not my thing. But if I want to know how they do that, then this is absolutely amazing. This is how they created their focus, sending a car down a track. And what they did after that was they built their foundation. They created a framework. Hey, we're going to show, different cars and how they can beat each other and what their weight is and everything like that. And then they ended up into flow. They created racing car tournaments that start with 64 cars. Now think about this. They start with 64. So every week they're showing a different part of a race. And then they have qualifying heats to get into the round of 64. And then they do the 64 car tournament down to the final race of 4 cars. And it started off with just 2 cars. Now they're racing 4 cars. But when you watch 3D Bot Makers on YouTube, it's absolutely exploded. Because in the membership you say, well, how did they make that? How did they make the track? How did they make the background for the track? Where did they get this? Where did they get that? How did they put it all together? Because now they film absolutely everything, and it just goes on and on and on. But this is the idea of having a single focus, sending a car down a track, and expanding it to, these are the cameras we use. Yeah, these are the cameras we use. This is how we do the editing. Now, they're not talking now about cars going down a track. They're talking about camera work. They're talking about film editing. They're talking about how they put their audio in. They've expanded into all kinds of things, but their niche is still the same. They're teaching skills that people can use in so many other different ways, but yet their primary focus are these little sucker cars. And that's the 5-part framework. Whatever it is you're going to do this year, whether it's knitting or model car racing or whatever it is that you feel your focus and your niche is, what's it going to be? And this is the 5 things. And again, this is a 10,000, 30,000 foot view. This is what it is. You get your focus, which is the hardest thing to nail down. And once you do, build a foundation around it, build a framework around that
Start with consistency, gain some flow, answer every question, create based off the comments, and then at that point, and this might be a year, 2 years down the road when you gain a real good following, start to expand into the fountain. Focus, foundation, framework, flow, and fountain. That is the 5-part startup framework that you need to know for 2024. Now, if you like this, I would appreciate it if you do this. Like, comment, share. I'd appreciate that very much. It just helps me keep going with what I've got going on. And you have a great day, a great week. I would love to hear your comments on this. I would love to hear, if this is the 10,000 foot for you, what do you want to know about the 50-foot view or the 25-foot view or face-to-face view? What would you like to know? This is the Startup Guide. I'm Bill McConnell. Once you conquer yourself, everything else becomes possible. Have an amazing, amazing week.